Again, thank you. I think this is going to be a really interesting topic because we're all living it, right? Either the professionals who are here are living it in their workplaces, and not only living it themselves, but being human resources professionals are helping everyone else deal with this in the workplace, right? Because the human resources department has a lot to do about how workplaces run, how they've had to change, and how to deal and cope with all the issues that that employees are facing, especially say working parents who are juggling working at home with like online school for their kids or other things like that. And secondly, the other topic we will talk about, so we'll turn our attention to this, is for the students. Many of you, I know, have been looking for jobs and internships and will continue to do so, and will do so over the next year. And things are different, right? We'll get some perspective from some HR professionals, including one who was a job seeker, was hired, and then onboarded during these crazy times. So we can learn a bit from her experience and maybe see what lessons we can take in your searches for internships and careers. So that's kind of the topics we'll be covering. So I hope you find that really interesting. I will again, for participants, especially your student participants, please just keep yourself muted until we get to the Q&A part. If you really are like, oh, jumping out of your seat to say something, just throw it into the chat and I'll be monitoring that as we go. Other than that, I'd like to, get our panelists to introduce themselves, and again, introduce yourself just briefly, and then also talk about one way your work or your work life has changed during these kind of COVID times that we live in. So I'm just going to go based on how I see people on my screen. So Angela, would you mind jumping in first?
Sure. So I'm Angela Finlay. I am Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for Dime Community Bank. I came into the organization 4 years ago this month to do a turnaround. So we started as a thrift bank. We were about 165 years old when I joined them, and got to take a 165-year-old organization and try to get them up to the 2010s at least. And, progressively we've gone past that. So it's been a wonderful journey from that standpoint. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with Mitsui, overseeing the Americas region with about 12,000 employees from an HR function. And prior to that, spent about 10 years in public accounting and consulting. I also am an alum of FDU. I graduated with my bachelor's in, I think, 2000, although you may want to fact check me because I've lost track of time, and my MBA in 2001. I decided it would be great fun to just double up on all my classes at the end and get through it all. So certainly was a great experience. I'm thrilled to be back and joining all of you. And in addition to that, kind of on a part-time basis, I also teach HR classes. So with that, how my life has changed, I've lived my life or my career doing a lot of travel. Mitsui, I traveled every week. I was in a lot of foreign countries. In Dime, I traveled still. I live in Morris Township, and I worked in Brooklyn. So I used to say it was like I was going to Nashville every day again, only just, all I did was cross 2 rivers. So from that standpoint, getting rid of a 3.5 hour commute is actually a wonderful thing. But interestingly, I found it was actually a hard thing because I was used to having that decompression and that time to get emails done and read and not have children screaming at me the whole time. So I actually had to adjust to figuring out how to decompress from the workday and to avoid burnout. And so certainly that has changed my work style over these last 6-7 months. So I look forward to talking with everyone.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And we have a lot of students who do like 4+1 so they get their MBA in a pretty quick turnaround. So that's not a foreign experience for a lot of our students. Nikki, if you could jump in next.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be here with you. And I too am an alumna from FDU, and I'm from the Forum Park campus. The interesting part is I didn't go very far. I actually work at Insperity, which is right in your backyard. so if you step out your door and look across and at the Park Avenue Club, we're actually located right behind the Park Avenue Club. The office is actually headquartered in Houston, Texas, or Kingwood, Texas. We've been around since 1986, and we have about 9,000 clients, and in our division, we have about 217 clients. So our company is a professional employment organization. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but basically what we do is we partner with other companies and provide HR outsourcing. So my specific role is I'm a manager of HR services, but what my team does is we provide HR compliance to other companies. So we do a lot of things. We do unemployment, we do compensation, benefits, payroll, but the piece that is mostly important to me is the HR compliance. So I have been in human resources since I graduated with my MBA from Fairleigh Dickinson in '98. And I am truly passionate about human resources and have enjoyed it ever since. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all about it today.
Okay, great.
And the thing that has changed for me is really just getting more comfortable with work-life balance and being home with my kids floating in and out, and just not understanding that mom's on a phone call and you're going to have to wait, and the sign that says do not disturb, it really means do not disturb, but it doesn't mean do not disturb to them. So really just having to let everyone on the phone know that, hey, you know, times have changed and you're just going to have to get used to it. So that's how my life has changed.
Great. Thank you so much. Bill, if you could jump in next.
Yeah, hi everybody. Bill Plastine here. I currently lead our employee development and performance practice at BASF. So like Nikki, our company is right across the street from the Florham campus. Probably can't miss it when you're turning in from Park Ave. But I've been with BASF for a little over 9 years now. And in my current role, I manage a team that oversees for our North American region a lot of different topics related to employee onboarding, performance management, career and employee development, learning and development, lists can go on and on, employee experience and engagement. We kind of dabble in a lot of different areas of practice for the North American region. For those of you who aren't familiar, BASF is a global chemical company. We have about 120,000 employees worldwide, and about 20,000 of those sit in the North American region. And Florham Park is our North American headquarters location. A little bit more about myself. I am also a faculty member, adjunct faculty. I just started last spring teaching a change management course and teaching an OB course this upcoming fall. And although I'm not an FDU alum, I am a New Jersey native. I went to TCNJ for my undergrad and got my MBA from Rutgers while working full time. So for any of you, those of you who are thinking about doing that or pursuing that or currently doing that, kudos, because I know it's a lot of energy and effort to make that a reality. But to go to the question on what's changed for me personally, I became a dad in February, at the end of February. So literally 2 weeks right before everything the world started to kind of turn upside down on its head. Professionally for me, that has really created an appreciation for the total rewards side of HR and the total rewards and compelling offer we have at BASF, and the way in which my company has been there for me, not only with a paternity leave, but with benefits and support to help manage all the multiple stresses that have sort of arisen that we weren't anticipating. And on top of that, having a newborn at home, it was quite a few challenging months for us, but it's given me definitely a greater appreciation for that side of the house, so to speak, when it comes to HR. So looking forward to chatting more with you all in the session.
All right, thank you, Bill. We'll move on to Greg next. And might I just ask that the introductions be a little bit shorter because we only have an hour and we have a lot of panelists. So, okay, great.
All right, thank you everybody. Greg Stockley. I'm a senior associate at Mercer. Also didn't go too far, which my head office right now is in Morristown. been there for over 2 years now. It's crazy how fast it goes. So what my firm does shortly is we partner with HR in different organizations in all aspects of whether it's benefits, retention, attraction, all areas of HR. So there's a lot of things that we do. I can speak the whole hour on the things that we do. But I am also an FDU alumni. I graduated in 2010. Once again, it feels like yesterday. So during this whole change, it was kind of crazy because I got a text one night saying that we weren't allowed in the office. So thank God I brought most of the stuff that I needed. So I saved a lot of miles in traffic. So that would be like the pro. The con is more of I was really structured, very regimented, get up, whether it's, I walk the dog, go to the gym, whatever it was, whatever my schedule was, I worked around it, but I was always very structured. So the one change for me that was abrupt is, you get up and you kind of got to keep yourself busy or not get into a lull. So that was one change that I would say was big for me. Okay,
great. Thank you so much, Greg. And Susan, if you could join us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Townsend. I am a Learning and Development Specialist with Insperity. My background is in learning and development and project management. Immediately before coming to Insperity, I was a career coach for the Flatiron School in New York City. What changed for me during COVID was getting my job at Insperity. I interviewed, was hired, and have onboarded all during COVID. So big life change in all of that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then Elizabeth, I saw you joined us.
Yes, I snuck in at the last second. Hi, this is Elizabeth. I'm an HR generalist for Chubb Insurance in White House Station, New Jersey. We're headquartered. So I've been there for about 2 years. I support about 1,400 clients. The job is different depending on the day. But other than that, I'm an FDU alum. I graduated in 2018. Wow, what am I talking about? But yeah, other than that, my work life hasn't changed terribly. I'm not a parent, so I don't have that added stress. But I would say, as far as work goes, I have been more intentional about reaching out to my clients and just the face-to-face stuff that you miss when you're not in the office.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I did not miss anyone. Bob said he might not be able to come. Okay, good. Okay, so the first question to the panelists, and I'll throw it to anyone who wants to jump in, is, so what are some of the, what are some of the changes in the COVID workplace that you see like sticking around, even, thinking forward several months or a year when maybe, things start to return a little bit more to normal? I don't think it'll ever revert exactly to how it was before COVID. And I'm wondering from you, what do you think might be a change that's relatively permanent to the workforce, to the workplace?
I'll jump in. So from my perspective, I think the two that I would throw out there are flexibility. I obviously live in the banking world and the financial world, and I'm not sure we were ever known to be the most flexible organization. A lot of people still showed up to work 9 to whatever, 5 days a week. And I think this has brought insight to the fact that we don't have to be tied to our desks every day. I don't think everybody's going to work remote forever. That I just think is not the reality. But I do think that it gives us the flexibility to kind of recreate schedules and rethink schedules. We have employees, similar to myself, that have children that are sitting at home that are working a few hours, not working a few hours. And I think people are now coming to realize that you can get your work done in a lot of different shapes and forms, and it doesn't have to be this prescriptive way that we've always thought about it. So that would be the first part. And the second part that I love that's come is I think you get a little bit more authenticity in the workplace, where you're starting to see people for who they are and accepting the fact that they're more than the body that shows up in the workplace to do the work every day. And whether it's that dog showing up on Zoom that everybody talks about, or the kid running behind, right? You're getting a little bit more of that human piece. And I love the stories, where the CEOs of companies are getting on and talking about how they, their wife cut their hair the day before, or things along those lines where people are starting to make an actual human connection. And so from that standpoint, I think that will stay because people are appreciating it. And I think going forward, we'll expect that there's a little bit more of the human aspect to the workplace and that we're going to be a little bit more authentic as we go forward, especially as. So those are just my 2 cents.
Great, thank you. Anyone else to jump in? You don't all have to jump in on every question, but if anyone would like to add to that, great first answer.
Yeah, I would agree with what Angela was saying. I think one of the things that the work from home has given us is all of a sudden coworkers are showing up without makeup on, without their hair done, things like that. So I agree. It brings a little more humanity, a little more personal touch to it. That being said, I think a lot of these changes that are happening now are kind of a shiny new toy for right now. Being able to work from home may not last. It's kind of cool right now, but then eventually, in a year or 2, 5, whatever, we might be like, we all need to be back in the office because this work from home thing is, not great anymore. So I think it's a change for right now, and I think there will be some benefits and some changes from it, but I don't know how many of them are going to be really long lasting.
Yeah, and what I would add to this conversation is at BASF, we're taking sort of what we refer to as a personas approach to thinking about the overall employee experience. For us, we're a chemical manufacturing company. It's about 50% of our employees don't have the luxury of being able to work from home. We have to run plants, we have to produce product. And therefore, we really need to segment our employee populations based on some unique needs of some of the subgroups of our employees, and think about that through many different HR lenses, from development to sourcing and attraction to retention and whatnot. So this notion of thinking about employees in these subgroups or ways in which they've been impacted by COVID is, I think, a theme that will continue on in our work in HR as unique situations continue to pop up and the pace of change really continues to evolve.
I think I saw Bob Russo has joined. Bob, can you jump in on this question and also introduce yourself? Okay, maybe not. Sorry to have interrupted the flow. Anyone else like to?
So yeah, I'll piggyback what Bill said. That's actually a great point about, it really depends on the organization right now. As he said, manufacturing workers, they can't exactly work from home. So there's a whole dynamic on, we're big in developing a culture in an organization. So there's a big push to say, how do we keep this culture? How do we keep our culture together when, Bill might be working from Bergen County and they have a manufacturing plant that he's used to, being in contact with down in Cherry Hill, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of work to be done there. For a pro though, I would say that I see a lot of organizations, they didn't realize how productive they could be without having 6 floors in Manhattan taken with all their employees in there. It depends on the job, obviously, and stuff like that. But there could be a negative. So one of the negatives for me is I'm more of an extrovert, all right? I would like to, grab a cup of coffee or lunch. You don't really get that human touch when you're meeting somebody over Zoom or you're having that conversation. When does that conversation happen when you're meeting somebody new is, hey, how many kids do you have? Or it's not the same. So that would be, it's a learning curve at the end of the day. We're all in the same boat and, you just got to take it one step at a time.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next, unless, I'm sorry, did someone else want to just jump in? Okay, so the next couple questions I want to direct to our panel, but a little more directly to some of our student concerns, I suppose. So the next 2 questions, and we'll take them in turn, is first off, what advice do you have for a job seeker during these times? And then secondly, assuming that someone is a young professional who gets a job, what are some of the maybe the obstacles or the opportunities to working really well and effectively in a COVID-ish workplace. So we'll start with the job seeking advice, I suppose, first, and also students, if you have any particular questions on this too, feel free to jump in the chat room. Okay, so anyone on the panel, what advice might, or maybe Susan could jump on this first, as you have the most recent experience doing this. What advice might you have for students who are seeking internships or jobs at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I would say is think beyond the job boards. You know, LinkedIn is great. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date, you know, professional looking picture. You know, there's amazing things you can do with your phone nowadays in terms of getting a great picture up there. But think beyond the job boards. What I would say is if there is a particular industry that you're interested in, find out, get their newsletter, find out if they're having a virtual conference and just kind of scan who's attending the conference. Go on Reddit, and I have learned that there's something called a subreddit where it is a more focused, you probably know better than I do, but go on Reddit, find somebody that you like, follow them, reach out to them. You know, same thing on Twitter. I had students at Flatiron School that were getting jobs off of Twitter because they had followed particular people, commented. Sometimes jobs, you know, opportunities to do volunteer projects are offered on Twitter, and then they got involved and eventually got hired. So don't just, you know, hit the easy apply button and sit back and wait for the phone to ring, because that might not happen. Another thing that I would say is be doing the work right now. So whatever industry, whatever job you're looking to get into, create a personal website and start doing that work. If it's copywriting, if it's marketing, if it's software engineering, whatever it is, be doing the work now so that you have something to show to potential employers to say, here's what I can do, and I am up to date on whatever, you know, whatever industry is I'm looking into. I have a lot more, but I don't want to steal the whole thing.
Okay, great. Thank you for getting us started there. And to anyone else in our panel, what advice might you have for a job seeker?
Hey, Steve, it's Bob Russo. Scott,
Oh,
hey guys. Sorry, I was late. It took me a bit to get connected, but I appreciate the time. The only thing I would say, maybe simply, is there's not a whole lot different to do. And what I mean by that, and I think she was just talking through it, the preparation is still critical, maybe a little bit more so. So make sure you're doing your research. Identify either companies or types of companies that you're looking to target, and find out as much about them as you can. Given the probably lack of in-person interviews, you know, as you're looking through LinkedIn, find other people that work at the company and try to connect with them. But whether or not they're actively involved in the interview process, just getting some networks, expanding your network to individuals so you can get a sense of the type of people that work for the company. For me, the toughest part about it now is that we've just hired a number of people. We went through a summer internship program. It's harder to get the feel for the company, either during an interview process or frankly, even as you're onboarding, right? So anything you can do up front to get to know people, get to, again, expand your network, I think is some of the critical work you'd want to do up front.
I would
just add, yep, sorry. I would just add, piggybacking off what they said, that you can schedule kind of virtual coffee meetings, work your network really well, because a lot of companies, I know Chubb included, are under hiring freezes right now. And that's tough for a job seeker, obviously. But when that hiring freeze is lifted for a lot of different industries, there's going to be a huge need, and they're going to refer to people they know before they're searching through applications of people they don't know.
And that actually was what I was going to say. I would second that. You know, I've had people just reach out to me saying, hey, you know, I'm trying to break into the HR space, or I'm interested in being an HR generalist, or I'm getting into the OD side. Can I just chat with you for 10, 15 minutes to ask questions and get to know what you did and how you built your network? And I can tell you, you know, 90% of the times that I get on those calls, either I can figure out maybe an opportunity in the future that would be great for them, or I can connect them to someone else. So I would just, the recommendation to not be afraid to reach out to people. They may not all respond to you, but when they do, it gives you a chance to have that one-on-one connection and be front of mind for anybody that could make another connection for you or could potentially have a role for you.
And I think in terms of building the network, one trend that we're seeing as a result of COVID is that roles are sort of borders are starting to disappear in terms of geographical limitations. You know, while I agree with what other folks said around that, you know, I don't think we're working from home permanently. There are certainly companies and some industries that are announcing that folks can work from home indefinitely. And in those industries, now you no longer can only look within a 20-minute or 20-mile radius of where you live, but you may want to think about networking beyond the geographical limitations that folks may once have been thinking about. So that's, I think, one key way in which we're seeing the recruiting market really change. And I think, too, to kind of carry it into the other question around what to do when you actually, you know, get in the role, prepping and get in, always be thinking about results and impact. So in whatever you're doing, now more than ever, employers are wanting to hear what was the actual tangible outcome or result of work that you've done, or projects that you've been on, or, you know, organizations that you belonged in college if you're still seeking, you know, an entry-level position. Because now more than ever need to get things out the door, focus on productivity, be results-oriented. So I'd give that as advice as well.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I find, especially when meeting with people just looking to break into human resources, is they're not 100% familiar with all the different areas of HR. So I would definitely encourage you to kind of do a little research about where your interests are, if it's compensation, if it's benefits, and sometimes it's just being a generalist, and that's okay too. But just having maybe some type of direction of where you want to go within human resources. So when you're talking to that person that's asking the question, you can say, you know, I really want to get my feet wet with being maybe more of a generalist to start with, but I ultimately want to probably steer my career more on compensation. So you can kind of give them an idea that you do have a focus, that you have done some research in an area that you're passionate about.
Great. I think this is awesome advice. If I could throw one more thing out there, I'm going to put this in the chat right now for everyone. We have a LinkedIn group for students in FDU who are interested in careers in human resources. Our alumni, many are members of this group as well, and I think most of our panelists are. Please join this group. This might be a good chance to maybe have a follow-up conversation with someone you've heard from today or something to that effect. So let me just plug that, but also kind of, you know, just to your great advice about building your network before maybe you can capitalize on a network. Use this time to learn and to build relationships. I think that's really, really important. Oh, we have a question. Are companies looking at international students for internships as well as focusing on local students because of COVID? And that's an interesting question. I know we have a fair amount of students from other countries who want to stay and work in the United States after graduation who are having a harder time being able to do that. So I think maybe that's what this question's kind of coming from, that concern.
Scott, it's Bob. I'll take a shot. At least some things that we're struggling with, not just for interns, unfortunately, but even for our actual employees. We have individuals from other countries who are not able to relocate, given some of the restrictions on travel and immigration. So it's making it a bit more difficult. So I'd say if you're an international student and you're already in the U.S., I think you have a better opportunity. But for people that are looking coming from other countries or people that are going to have to return until we get past this kind of craziness with our immigration issues, it's going to be a challenge.
So Madeline, did that help with your question?
Yes, it did. I was just wondering because I am international and I just wanted to know if they're really focusing on more of local students or if they are considering internationals for possible internships. So thank you.
Yeah, no, we had two. We got lucky. We had two interns that came through that were already here. They were they're from China and they were able to stay, so it worked. But again, as long as if you're physically here already, I think it gives you a leg up. Whether it's either a trip back required or again a visa refreshing is where it gets a little trickier.
Great. I just want to then pose my final kind of plans question, and then we can maybe have a little more discussion as we go. For our students who will soon be professionals in many different areas of business or whatever, what are some things that you think could be either obstacles or something they should be mindful about as they join a workplace during times where lots of employees might be remote or sometimes remote and sometimes flexible, and things aren't quite as straightforward perhaps or structured as they had been before. So maybe what are some things that new employees should be thinking about?
I can answer this. If you are going to be working remotely, onboarding remotely as I did, make sure that you structure your day. I have always found it a good practice to get up at a certain time, make sure that I am ready, hair is combed and makeup on or whatever you're going to be doing, wearing actual clothing, not your jammies, and keep to a schedule. Make sure that you are aware of what you need to be doing that day. Because you're onboarding in a remote and you can't just go down the hall or look over the cubicle wall, reach out to other people and ask them what you can be doing to get up to speed. And then also make sure that you're setting a schedule for yourself in terms of when you're going to take your breaks. Take an hour lunch, or make sure that you are going to be ending your day at a particular time, because you need that work-life balance. It's very nerve-wracking to be new at a company, and so you want to make sure that you're also giving yourself time for being you.
Yeah, I find that, again, I have a job that has always allowed me to work from home quite a bit, and it's often it's difficult to know when the boundary is, right? There's always an email, there's always a thing, but I think it's important to build some of that structure for yourself if you're going to have less of it imposed on you. Great first answer. Anyone else to jump in?
I would just add, we heard some people as we were going through a lot of the lockdown in March and April and May, and my recommendation to all of them was take time out of your day to introduce and talk to people in the organization, right? Because I think you lose out on that opportunity to pass somebody or meet someone in the hallway or talk to them while you're getting coffee or whatever it may be. And I think that's going to be our challenge as long as we're all working remote is keeping that collaboration and kind of one-off conversations. So what I encouraged them to do and what I think worked well for them was the opportunity to just reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm new. I'd love to chat with you for 15, 20 minutes, introduce myself, get to know you so that you can start to build your network in an organization, which I think is critical, especially when you're starting out in your career and starting out with a company to help you get a little bit more comfortable with the organization and get a better understanding of the organization.
Yeah, I agree. I know we discussed a lot about the external networking. Internal networking within your colleagues is just as important. Those at the end of the day are kind of like they're going to be your family. Hopefully, you will be able to be with them in person, but exactly what Angela said, don't be shy. I know it could be, kind of hard as your first job. Don't be shy. Schedule a Zoom meeting for 10 minutes and just introduce yourself. And, just people want to know about you, not just, an email that comes from Greg Stockley, right? There's that internal networking that's going to push you further on in your career, and it'll go a long way.
Volunteer. Be okay stepping up to things that may be a little bit out of your comfort zone, but still well within your reach. And a colleague and I actually were talking about this just yesterday, that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but it's about your work ethic And the fact that you step up and you do it will get you recognized a lot quicker than the things that you know.
Especially when you're young, because the expectation is not that you're going to be the expert in everything. It's going to be that, you know, but I think they look at, many places look at newer employees as, all right, you know, this person is going to prove themselves, is going to like really exert high effort. So when you do that, I think it builds a good reputation there. If you've taken our career strategy course, we talk a lot about these types of issues.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. They're hopefully great people at the end of the day. They're there to help you. They want you to succeed, because the more you succeed, the more they succeed. So,
you know, on this topic, and again, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much, but I'm actually working on a book about these issues right now. So I've been interviewing lots of people, and there's this one company that they've been working remotely for years. When they bring a new employee on, they said actually their employee onboarding and orientation is better than it used to be. Because it used to be people would just come in and you'd be like, okay, the person can go, you know, figure out who to talk to and take lunch breaks and blah, blah, blah. But instead, they've really structured it that this person gets sit-down Zoom meetings with, you know, each person and really gets to know what all the different parts of the organization are doing, so you could build that internal network and find those opportunities to volunteer. So some companies have thought a lot about this. I think a lot of others haven't, and I know some students who had summer internships this summer were a little frustrated by the fact that they were getting good work and it was on their resume, but they didn't quite do the internal networking that they were able to. So I think, Greg, you're right. You need to redouble your efforts to do that.
And with that, Scott, I think part of it's also if you've got a company that has a structured integration program, wonderful. But if not, ask for one, right? Just whoever your manager is, say, can you give me 10 or 15 people that you think I should meet with, and can you make an introduction? I mean, don't feel like you're out on your own. A lot of times people just don't think of it. They're not obviously trying to prevent you from having a successful integration. But just put the thought in their head and ask the question and say, I'll do the work. I just, give me 15 names, give me people I should talk to, and don't be afraid to kind of push that a bit on the leaders you're working with.
That's fantastic. Very usable advice. Like, you should all be writing that down, students, or putting in your phones or something. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Any other thoughts from our panel? Okay, so what I'll do now for our remaining time, let's kind of crank through some of the questions that students have put onto the chat, if that's okay. And of course, if you have any more, feel free to add them on. Okay, so from Lily, are companies you work for helping you adjust mentally and checking in on employee well-being more during this hard time, aside from just readjusting to normal work functions? I think that's a super important question. I have some perspective on it, but I'd love to hear from our panel.
So I think this is an awesome question and something you should ask on an interview if you're not already at a company. So, because this, I think, can be really indicative of the sort of company that you want to work for. That being said, the company I work for has taken a lot of care to establish a working parent network. We established something called Race Matters when there was some racial tension, and continues to be, to sort of bring light to that. With that being said, we've continued to hold focus groups that kind of go through what do people need, because we don't want to just continue to give out, cool giveaways in the mail that people feel good about our company if what they really need is an extra hour in the day to help their kids with school. So definitely that. We also have reutilized the Employee Assistance Program, which offers counseling and support and that sort of stuff. So definitely a good question and a good way to get a feel of how employees treat how companies treat their employees, rather.
I would echo what Elizabeth said. We were doing a lot of that during the pandemic. We certainly were focused on wellness before all of this happened, but it became kind of a double down effort during this time. So, we certainly created the resource group, had groups by age of children, so you could hear stories of what to do with 2-year-old or your 12-year-old or your 18-year-old if they were driving you crazy at home at that time. But there was also a lot of emphasis of here are ways that you can sit in on this webinar that'll help you deal with stress. And we had an employee whose husband is a fitness instructor who put out videos for us that we could use and kind of say to employees, here's 15 minutes of fitness you could do at home to kind of help relieve stress and keep you moving. So I think to the extent that a company cares about its employees, it should have been doing something, right? The one thing I would add is we did, right before this all happened, we put in place employee survey tool that's kind of a crowdsourcing thing that allowed us to pose a question, you know, what's your biggest struggle this week, and have people go in and put in what their challenge was and then have others rate it. And that really helped us pivot our wellness program to be much more aligned with what they were dealing with at that time, and then adjust as these months have gone on, instead of us just guessing what we thought it was supposed to be. And I think that's critical for any company to really get that pulse of what's going on and what they are really struggling with.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, and I think that it's, you know, I don't want to call it a trend, but I think many more companies are recognizing that their employees are struggling right now, and they're balancing lots of things. And also, you talked about how you're getting a little more insight into people's lives when we work this way, right? And you know, so maybe that has caused some employers to increase their efforts for wellness and employee assistance programs and things like that. I think it's a real growth area in HR anyway, leading into the pandemic, and it's I think it's only going to get more so as well. So great, thank you, Lily. Good question and good answers. So from Emily, are there companies that hire FDU students outside of New York and New Jersey? Obviously, we focus a little more on New York and New Jersey, but I suppose not just our panelists, but we have a few, you know, Mary's here, for example, and she could maybe chime in here too.
So this goes back to like the networking standpoint as well. LinkedIn is a huge tool. You'd be surprised how many alumni aren't in the New York, New Jersey area. So I would start there and just, you know, start with an organization that you're interested or, you know, people in your area that graduate, and just send a friendly note, introduce yourself, tell them what your goals are, or, you know, ask a little bit about them. Just make it, you know, more of a friendly introduction. And you, like I said, I don't want to, you know, beat a dead horse. You'd be surprised how open people are into helping, and I'm one of them. So if I can help in any way, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help all of you. So
the other part, and it really, I think, tells nicely into the content here, is a lot of companies are rethinking what it means to work, you know, from, you know, so our company is based mainly in New Jersey. We do have offices in other parts of the country. We have had a relatively strict, you have to be in an office type policy over the last several years, because we invested lots in wonderful workspace, and we got to rethink that now, right? So I think even if a company is based in one state or another, you're seeing a lot more companies become flexible, even if they end up going back to a standard workspace, open to the idea of remote working. So I think it becomes more your comfort level with not going to an office if you're in a remote location. But I think you'll see more and more companies become a bit more flexible, a bit more open to where people need to be to get their jobs done.
Yeah, I mean, our company, we have 70 offices, guys. So, you know, look at our website, see where we're hiring. I do know that we are hiring HRR reps for another division. I don't know where they're located. I just happened to be looking at our website last night, right before I fell asleep, so I don't have a lot of information, but I will tell you that we are hiring more on the entry level in some other areas. So certainly take a look at our website.
Yeah, so in my experience, you know, it's great that we're in, you know, north central Jersey and New York, because there's so many, you know, employers here and large companies headquartered here, or at least regional headquarters here, or U.S. headquarters here, and that could be an entry to the rest of the world. But I think sometimes our students look at that as a crutch, and I think a lot of Jersey kids, and I was a Jersey kid myself, we don't want to go too far from home. And I've been frustrated by some students who have had opportunities elsewhere who did not take them in order to stay home. So I was very pleased to see that question, actually.
And I think too, I would recommend, one of the regrets for me, Scott, is not necessarily taking advantage of a rotational program. A lot of companies nowadays offer that opportunity. It looks a little bit differently right now. We're doing virtual rotations in different business units, or kind of streaming into different sites. But when we hopefully get back to a little bit of old world of being able to travel and a little bit more mobile, the notion of really being able to experience business at different sites or in different countries or with different customers really is invaluable. And it does get a little bit tougher as life goes on for multiple different reasons. So if opportunities are available to you now, I would definitely recommend looking into that a little bit further. And the notion of maybe moving away from home for 6 to 12 months or 2 years now versus doing that later in life might be a little bit more palpable to you based on your individual circumstance, but would definitely recommend looking into those rotational programs that help accelerate development and give you really well-rounded perspective right off the bat.
Great.
And
so
especially if you, well, sorry, I was going to just add, and especially if you could find a company that, if you haven't already done a graduate program, if you could find an organization that would help contribute to that, that would always be a nice opportunity as well.
Great, thanks. So the next question here, what would you say to someone who is in business development, given the work from home scenario? So there seems to be, that might be an extra obstacle to business development type of roles. If anyone has perspective on that.
So I manage our BDM team, which is our business development management team, and they're almost entirely remote even when they're not in a pandemic. So I don't know that they have an exceptionally challenging time right now. Certainly they're not going to clients' offices, they're doing that more remotely, but they are at home as they normally are. They're scheduling those same calls. They're not meeting up at golf courses. They're doing it over their computer instead. So.
Okay, great. Craig, were you gonna say something there?
Yeah, I would say obviously it depends on the product and the service, but I would take this opportunity to, how can you be different? Everybody was turned upside down at the same time. So how can you differentiate yourself from what your competitors are doing in that regards? Because, you use technology. You definitely know way more about technology than a lot of us on this panel. So use that to your advantage and think about how you can differentiate yourself to, provide that service. And at the end of the day, you want to help somebody. So I would leverage on helping, and whether it's, they're impacted by COVID or whatever it may be, but just use all the tools and resources that you have and just differentiate yourself.
And I would echo that. I mean, I've got a whole retail team, and I have a whole business banking team and lending team, and they have found doors opening in the pandemic that they've never had before, right? Given the situation with organizations and financing and all the other issues that are going on. And it really comes down to their connections and being able to have a conversation with someone and be able to explain what you can do to help them. And, in today's day and age, virtual is just as fine to have that conversation as kind of sitting across from them. The one challenge I would say that a lot of our sales focused staff are facing is Zoom fatigue, where people are kind of tired of having these one-on-one conversations over a computer. So they're actually getting a little bit more creative of kind of meeting someone, at a Starbucks and a table outside 6 feet apart, or having just regular phone calls instead of Zoom calls, right? To try and meet the clients where they're at. Especially if they're kind of tired of having to get dressed up in the morning and get on a 9 a.m. call with them. They're getting a little bit more creative on how they're meeting them at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. We had one, this came to me directly, but I think it was meant to be shared, but what's the probability of freshmen and sophomores getting internships? You know, we focused a little bit on the kind of junior, senior getting like really ready to launch, but in this environment, do you think it's harder, or do you have any particular advice for maybe those who are early in their college career?
Really bother Mary.
Yes, I was waiting for our panel to answer, but there are freshmen and sophomore then that can get internships. And as a matter of fact, we're trying to work on something now where a freshman can get an internship for 1 credit. So if they're not getting paid, if it's a small company, they may still be able to get 1 credit. So absolutely, the sooner the better.
Yeah, I find in my experience working with Mary's office and with lots of students is the internships are a little different in freshman, sophomore year than they get to in junior, senior, which get to be at, you know, maybe more larger professionalized companies with like established internship programs, whereas freshman, sophomore, they can be smaller organizations that just need an extra pair of hands, and you learn a little more like transferable stuff as opposed to really becoming a super expert then, and they're super valuable, even if it's not exactly what you want. You know, you've learned that, and you've learned, you know, lots of other lessons through them. So, yeah, and I think, you know, the career, the placement and outreach office here does a really nice job with all our students. So, you know, I think that's the right thing. So to the person who asked that question, you should send an email to Mary Sakin like now. Okay, so from Maya, to what extent does emotional intelligence play a role in productivity and overall success? Is there an effective way to measure or promote personal or social competence? That's a really interesting question. As an organizational behavior professor, I love seeing questions like that. So anyone, any perspective on emotional intelligence and maybe the importance of it and maybe how we can develop it?
Yeah, so I think in today's world, the ability to empathize is one of those drastically underrated skills, or one that's not talked about enough. For us now at BASF for some time, we've been making a culture change where we not just focus on the what in all of our HR processes, but we even put even more emphasis on the how. So not just what results you're delivering, but how you're going about delivering them. Does it call on greater innovation, greater collaboration, et cetera? And what we see when we have like 360-degree feedback from our leaders, one of the key differentiators are those leaders who really know how to get the how right and are able to put themselves in the shoes of their employees to understand why a deadline might be missed because of a real personal challenge, or why, you know, teams might need more coaching or support because of a business circumstance. So I think it's a really great question, and I would say EQ, or emotional intelligence, is pivotal to the success of teams and to leaders, and it's something to think about now as you continue to prep for first career moves and whatnot.
Yeah, you know, I think emotional intelligence is absolutely key, but it'll help in everything else you do. I don't know if like saying I have super high emotional intelligence really helps you in an interview as opposed to exhibiting it in some of your experiences or in your answers or in your how you work with other people.
Hey Scott, this is Bob. I was going to say that or very similar. There's a book that was out very recently. I'm blanking on the author. If I can find it, I'll either put it in the chat or send it on to you. But it's actually hiring for EQ versus IQ, and it talks about behavioral interviews and how to structure the questions, but also gives some nice tips on how to think about framing your answers to make sure you're pulling out those elements that aren't just purely result driven.
I would add that, you know, I think in HR or anybody that's been kind of in the OD space for a while, we've always known that hiring for emotional intelligence, hiring for kind of those personal characteristics are more pivotal than sometimes the hard skills themselves. What I have found during the last 6 to 7 months is there are a lot more leaders now understanding the importance of it, right? Where perhaps they did not see their own awareness of how important it is that someone's resilient and that they can be agile and that, you know, they can be empathetic and all these other things that I don't think as organizations we've been really focused on, at least from the business side or other parts of the organization, no matter how much HR has always tried to push it. But I do think we're at a point, and I hope it's a good turning point where people are starting to understand the real importance of it as they watch their teams have to turn on a dime and change and adjust and deal with a lot of heavy issues that you really need strong leaders and individuals in key positions throughout the organization to keep you moving when you are in these difficult times.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And just one thing that I would suggest is do some research. Look up what behavioral interview questions are being asked or, you know, are the most popular right now. And write them all out. Write your answers out before your interview. Because then that way you can not be taken by surprise. You know, if you're asked a particular question, it's at least gone through your brain once and you've written it down so you can refer to it. And just before leaving Flatiron School, I had a student that was hired at Amazon Web Service, and he showed me 6 pages of stories that he had written down for every scenario that you could possibly come up with. So that when he was asked a question about, you know, can you tell me about a time when you, whatever, he had that answer right in front of him, and he had already thought about it and was able to give a good answer.
Okay, well, we're through our student questions. I just have, I think one more. Just in the interviewing and hiring process, what is different if you're hiring people or, you know, have recently been hired? Are people asking different things? Are they asking you to record your own interview? I know that's something that was starting to become a trend before all this happened. You know, is the process really different, or is it just, you know, through electronic means as opposed to sitting in the same room?
A lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one thing too is, you know, through the hiring process that I went through is, you know, a lot of the hiring process would be a few people around the table that you're speaking with. And, you know, now I feel like you're going to get asked the same question a lot because now that they haven't heard the answer already from their colleagues. So I would just say stay patient on that sense and just be persistent. It's you know, it's a different world, and it's a different world for everybody.
Yep. Okay, the last question I got here is, how can I show my professor my attendance? So that's a technical question, I think, Mary.
That's a Mary question. Okay, here you go.
Right, because we do have a system where people can get sometimes extra credit, or at least with the, what is that, suitable, you can get credit towards certain goals and things like that.
Yes, so just copy the QR code and you'll have credit.
Awesome. Well, you know, I guess if there's anyone on the panel who has any last thing, unexpressed thought, or something they really wanted to say but were unable to because of the conversations that were being had, why don't you just jump in now? Otherwise, you know, I'm super happy. I think this was a great hour. I want to thank all our students for coming. This is going above and beyond just regular classroom stuff. This is what separates you. And to our panel, of course, thank you for donating your extremely valuable time to help us out today.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you to Scott. You're an amazing moderator, and thanks to the panel. You guys were awesome.
Have a great rest of the semester. You know, I'm sorry, students, that we will not see each other in person this semester, but hopefully next time.
And thanks to Dean Balthazar for showing up.
Can you put that code back up, please?
Oh, sure.
What app do we use again?
It's the Suitable app.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And if the panel, if any of you can stick around for just like 2 more minutes, that'd be great. If you can't, I totally understand too. Okay. Still a few people here, but again, I just wanted to a little more particularly thank our guests. So for Greg and Nikki and Angela and Elizabeth and Bill and Bob and Susan, really thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Some of you aren't even alumni, and you did this to help us. So I really appreciate it very, very much. And I look forward to doing something like this again. If I could ever be of help to you, please let me know. And I'd love to stay in touch.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you guys so
Thanks
much.
a lot. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can, just be a resource moving forward, and
Great.
I think it will be extremely valuable.
Great. Thanks. And Elizabeth, it's nice to have to see you after just a couple years of you graduating. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Not too far.
Yeah, no, it was a good 2 years. We were like in each other's lives quite a bit with all our classes together. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Yep. And Steve, thank you for being here too.
Thanks.
I didn't even see Steve before.
All right. Well, I want to respect your time, but I just wanted to make sure, I gave you a proper thank you before we left.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great.
Bye.
I really, thank you.
And we had record attendance.
Really? Yeah, that was good. That was 50 something, right? At
That
one
was
point.
really good.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Um,
expect that many people. That was great.
If I could get the recording at some point, that would be
Yeah, I'll send
great.
it to you, for sure.
Do you do the